Hello and good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to this SBL InFocus webinar support for 2024 September exams. My name is Hazel McLucas and I work as an Education Partner Support Manager at ACCA. As the title of the webinar suggests, the Examiner's Report Unlocked, our session today is designed to support you with the insights from the latest Examiner report of Strategic Business Leader. Our expert tutor, Sean Purcell, has joined us to help you with the upcoming exam preparation. During the session, he will take you through the technical examples from previous exams and share practical advice for tackling the September exams. He'll also talk about the strategies that you should adopt to avoid common pitfalls and improve your exam performance. And towards the end of the session, we'll have a live Q&A as well. But before I hand over to Sean, I'd like to cover just a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a number of icons. There's a help icon, which provides resources and information to help you resolve any technical issues that you might experience. There are icons for both the slides and the media player, and you'll need to see both of these during the webinar, so make sure that you've selected them and you can see them on the screen. There's an attendee chat, so you can engage with fellow webinar attendees. However, please do not share any of your personal information in that chat. And there's a resource list, and if you click on this, you'll be able to access resources relevant to today's webinar, and this will include direct links. You can rearrange your screen to suit and resize the windows if you need to. And if at any point you can't hear what we're saying or see any of the visuals, then please refresh your browser. Registering for this webinar means that you'll be sent an email tomorrow with details on how you can listen to it again. So don't worry if you miss something or you have technical issues. You'll be able to access the recording. I'm going to hand over to Sean in a moment, and I will be back with you towards the end of the session. But if you'd like to ask ACCA or Sean any questions, then please put them in the Q&A section. Please note that we can't guarantee responding to everyone directly, either verbally or in the web chat, but we hope that the questions that we share today will be helpful for everyone. So I'll hand over to you, Sean.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Hazel, and good evening, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all well, and well done for taking the time to improve your performance in SBL. Just before we get going, where are we all dialing in from? I think there's quite a lot of people registered for this. I think there's 1,500 or 1,600. So where are we coming from? If you just let me know in the attendee chat, just so we've got an idea of the dynamic of the audience. Where are we coming from? We've got a couple of polls as well, so we're going to try and make this as interactive as possible. So if you could put something in the attendee chat, that would be fantastic. Got someone, a few from the UK, from India, from Rotherham, not the UK, but Rotherham. Very welcome, Emily. Malaysia, Amsterdam, the Czech Republic, Cyprus, India, Manchester, from Keene. Adrian from London, Birmingham, Leicester, Glasgow, India, Pakistan, Czech Republic, Poland, South Asia. That's quite a big area you're occupying there, Omer. Luxembourg, Dublin, Dubai, Cameroon Island, Pakistan, Kuwait, Oman, Botswana, London, Cornwall, Malta, Lesotho in Africa, Pakistan. Fantastic. Just shows how diverse the ACCA population is. I've been lucky to go to many of the countries that you mentioned there with the ACCA often. So you're very welcome. This session is designed to help you. So your job is to ask questions, and I will endeavor to answer as many as I can. Sometimes questions repeat, so maybe we cover, one answer for two or three questions, but that's how we're going to do it. So in terms of me, who am I? Well, I'm an accountant like you. I never worked in practice. I worked in industry. I worked in businesses like manufacturing, retail, financial services. And I also am very involved in training, both of students and doing CPD. I do a lot of CPD in the area of the future of finance and finance business partnering. And I also lecture students on a platinum approved course, helping them understand SBL. In terms of what we are going to do today, we're going to have a look at the examiner's report. Well, obviously the examiner's report is pretty big, so we're not going to look at all of it, but I'm going to give you the main highlights. And your job is to maybe take some time to digest the full report so you understand what the examiner expects from you. I'll link some of my highlights with some technical examples of how students could have done better in the March 24 exam sitting. And then I'll give you some advice on how you can do better and how to improve typical mistakes students make. And then we'll leave at least 15 minutes towards the end to do a full Q&A. So that's where we're going with this. There's also a recording of this webinar if you get cut off or if you have to go into a meeting. So that's where we're going. Yep. Let me first of all just stress why examiner reports are so important. I'm not sure whether you always read them, but as a tutor who wants to get the most for their students, I certainly do. And I would argue that they're probably the most important resource for your exam, yet many students don't actually often take the time to look at them. So I'm going to just maybe remind you of what's included. And they really give a great insight into what candidates do wrong. And yeah, it's really important that you follow them, because if a candidate is weak in a particular area, you can guarantee that the examining team aren't happy about that weakness and want to check that that weakness has been dealt with. And so, you know, they're a great indicator of what an examiner is likely to ask you in future exams. So really, really important for you to take the time to digest them. So we're going to spend about 15 minutes talking about the examiner's report. But, you know, as I say, the real examiner's report is about 23 pages long. So you have a look at that in more detail in your own time to get the full benefit. I will just give you the headlines. Yeah, so that's what we're going to do. So let's have a think about the examiner report and look at the key lessons from the March-June report. And to be honest, though, I read all the examiner's reports and have done for 20 years. And if I'm honest with you, the things that are included in them often repeat, rinse, repeat, indicating that students really don't digest and think what the examiner wants them to do better next time. So hopefully this webinar is going to change all of that, and you are going to digest and make corrections if you feel some of the issues discussed are the ones practiced by you. So if we think about SBL and what it includes, SBL, obviously, we have 20 technical marks, yeah, on SBL. Let me just click this. And we need to apply that, and we then have, so we have 80 technical marks and 20 professional skills marks. And I would say if you are reading the report, and not just but we're focusing on the March-June one, but if you read most reports, one thing that examiners feel is not practiced well enough by students is application. Yep. So what they mean by that is they sometimes just give generic knowledge. And if you just give rote learned generic knowledge, you're really not going to get any marks for that. And answers need to be applied in the context of the case. So really important that we apply things in the context of the case. Another regular visitor that keeps coming back in examiners' reports is a student's copy and pasting all the time. Yeah, it's a regular visitor. Well, you're not going to get any marks for that at all. You know, there's a key word in SBL which is called synthesis, which means taking the information, interpreting it your way, and then delivering that on the page. So copy and pasting is not to be recommended because there are no marks and it will just, you know, be a waste of time. So what I'd say you need to make sure you do is you need to, you know, make sure that you digest the pre-seen information, understand the industry, And you know, to stop you copying and pasting and being able to apply your knowledge, reading of the pre-scene and the exhibits would be key. So really be careful on that. Don't copy and paste is the bottom line, because it's just going to waste your time. And there's another thing: students see a topic and then they answer a question which they wanted to be asked, unfortunately not answering the question that actually was asked. Yeah, and that's a fairly common thing again that you need to make sure you acknowledge and don't do. There's really no marks for that either, so be careful. And then final point I would suggest came up in this, well, not the final, but the next point rather that came up is people are not using the information to support answers. So they just give, they're quite generic. They give some theoretical answer. You need to, you know, be catalyzed by theories, but you need to take that theory and then, you know, include it within the context of the scenario. Yeah, that's really important. So, you know, what industry is it? How does your answer integrate with the point you're making? Yeah, so again, really important that you understand the context. And then the one that you really need to make sure you overcome, this is a big common problem, and that is poor time allocation. Yeah, so how do we improve that? Well, I'm going to talk later, but just in case you're not here later, you improve it by practicing mocks on the CBE platform. Not on Word, not on Excel, because your exam is not on Word or Excel. Your exam is on the ACCA CBE platform. And the education team put an awful lot of effort into putting mocks on the platform for you, exactly the same as they are in the exam. So please, please, please make sure that you do that. Yeah. And the other thing you also need to make sure you do, just to remind you, is when you are accessing information to help you understand ACCA SBL, please don't go looking at all the false prophets on Facebook or wherever else there is. You either get your information from ACCA approved resources, but the, you know, regular, updated and massively re-engineered ACCA Study Hub gives you everything you need to know. You shouldn't really go anywhere but that. So the ACCA Study Hub is the place I want you to be looking at stuff. Okay, so that's what I want you to do. I don't know if I can answer I'm just have a quick look through the questions on that session. On that, I've got Elia says, how many mock exams would I suggest doing in the next 2 to 3 weeks? I'm currently bullet pointing my answers. Well, you will not think about what SBL is. SBL is asking you to behave as a strategic business leader in the workplace. Yeah. So you're often asked to give advice as a management consultant. If you were a management consultant giving advice to CEOs in the workplace, you would not be giving bullet pointed advice. You would be giving, you know, proper, comprehensive, articulated information. So bullet points, definitely not. You need to learn how to develop your bullet points into proper business English. Okay, so that would be what I'd say. I would do as many mocks as you can, but do the mocks to time. Don't be jumping through mocks at a speed. I'd much rather you do 2 or 3 quality mocks at a time. And maybe it's always good to get them marked. See if you are part of a course, try to get them marked if you can. Otherwise, you know, there is information on how to mark SBL, and maybe try and get a study buddy and mark each other's. That would be my advice on that. So that answers a few questions people asking about marks. Let me see. Are there any articles about preferred communication format? Really, Joshua, in terms of communication format, it would be format an expectation of what you would do in the workplace. So people sometimes want pro formas on a report format, but if I worked for, I don't know, Unilever, the way in which I would write a report would probably be different to how I'd write a report from maybe, BP or American Airlines. So as long as it's professional, that's absolutely fine. Yep. Okay. Are the questions for the morning session, the afternoon session different? Yes, they are, but that shouldn't make any difference to you because you're going to be well prepared. ACCA is taken on different time zones, so yes, it's not the same exam all over the place. Another question linked by Daniel regarding bullet points. What about on PowerPoint or slides with supporting notes? Well, there isn't really any marks given for the slide on SBL. Where the marks are given are where you develop your bullet points in the notes section. So that's where the marks will be awarded. So there's not really any marks for the bullet points on the slides. The marks are awarded for the notes. I think it depends in the context. Aaron says, is it better to write your answers in first person or third person? It really depends on the context of the question which you are asked. Okay, there are a few answers there. I will endeavor to try to get through more, but let's move on to the next section that I wanted to talk about. And in the next section, I wanted to just show you some technical examples to demonstrate student errors. I'm going to use some questions from the exam to back this up. So the comments I've just made, how did they manifest themselves in the March-June 2024 session? That's what we're going to look at. So if I just remind you, this is based on the information that you can find in the examiner's report. In task 1B, we were asked to demonstrate 2 presentational slides with accompanying notes for the board, which discuss how technological developments could deliver growth for PVS. And then the next part was the drawbacks for PVS, including ethical issues of adopting such developments. Yeah. So we're going to look at part 1 about the errors. But it says, just to give you an intro, there's 2 slides, there's 16 marks. So you should be allocating 50% of your time to part 1 and 50% of your time to the second part. Okay, so that would give proper balance. Yeah, so we're therefore going to assume 50% of 16 marks is about 8 marks for part 1 and 8 marks for part 2. So you need to ensure to get 8 marks, you have an appropriate number of points. And this is a very common question I get about how much do I write for a mark and do I get 2 marks per point? Well, let me answer that one before anyone asks it, if you've not asked it already. And basically marking schemes will not normally give you any more than 2 marks for a fully developed point. And if you're going to get the full 2 marks, first of all, you need to deliver an insightful, relevant point to get the first mark. So that's not copying and pasting. That's coming up with an interpretation of what's going on in the context of the business in relation to the requirements you've been asked. Yeah. So this is asking how technological developments could deliver growth. You're not copying and pasting from a task or from the pre-seen. You're using your own brain to give an opinion on that. Yeah. So if you do that, you would get a mark. Yeah. If you were able then to take that point and develop it with maybe a so what and maybe a why, then we could take that from a 1 mark point to a 2 mark point. Okay. So hopefully that helps. Once we've got to the end of this, we will we'll maybe have a quick look at the questions. So question here, how could they deliver growth? And the exhibit supporting this was exhibit 2, and it described the benefits of various technological developments for the pet services industry. And you needed to talk about how could they develop growth. That was a question. In the calm light of day, it seems very obvious that's what you were supposed to do, but sadly, people didn't do that. So what happened? Well, the benefits that you could get could be that if you've got technology, maybe the vets could work from home. Yeah, they could improve their quality of life And you could talk about that because, they wouldn't have to commute and all the rest of it. And they, as a result, might lead to lower staff turnover, which was also mentioned in the scenario. If it seems to be a great place to work, it would also maybe give workers a better work-life balance, and make the company more attractive, which again, you've drawn those conclusions from the information. You haven't copied and pasted stuff. So slight difference to copying and pasting, well, quite a big difference. Okay, so just to remind you what students actually did, they did what I've just said. They copied and pasted to produce a list, but they didn't develop any on how the benefits could develop growth. They just said, these are the benefits of technology. Sometimes just a list that they'd learn, these are the benefits of technology. Well, the question didn't ask that. The question asked how it could develop growth in the vet services industry. And that was a common mistake many people did. Okay, so learn from that. Task 2B, asked to provide briefing notes to the HR director, which assess how corporate social responsibility strategy could impact on each of PVS's key stakeholders. And often people miss the word and, where appropriate, how would this enable growth in market share? Yeah, so we're going to get, this is part B. So in terms of what we would do here, 16 marks are available. So you're going to have to do quite a few points to get the 16 marks. Yeah, you need at least 8, a minimum of 8 points to get 50%. And some people seem to write an answer, but their answer isn't in the context of the marks available. Yeah, so make sure your answer is. So what did a good answer look like on this? Well, first of all, you would probably, if you're going to try to get at least 8 marks and you're going to talk about maybe stakeholders, and then you were maybe going to talk about how that could develop growth, I would think you probably need to build on at least 4 or 5 stakeholders to be safe. So you're going to get 4 or 5 marks on the stakeholders, and then you're going to get 4 or 5 marks on how market share could be enabled. Yeah, so that's going to move you into a pass zone. So kind of understand how my brain is working. I'm thinking, how many marks do I need to get? And there's 2 parts to the question. It was talking about stakeholders and it was talking about growth. So I'm thinking, okay, probably to be safe, let's try and get 10 out of 16 in case one of my points isn't very good. And there's a minimum 5 stakeholders, 5 things talking about growth. That's how I'm thinking. Yeah, that would get you more than 8 marks, which is more than a pass. What did candidates do though? Well, they just did a brain dump about corporate social responsibility, didn't connect it to the vet services. They talked about 2 or 3 stakeholders. Well, the maximum you're going to get for that is 4 to 6 marks. They didn't talk about CSR's impact on the stakeholders. Yeah. They basically just didn't contextualize it at all. They just talked about CSR without contextualizing it in the pet services industry. And again, just generic comments about what's good about CSR. Yeah, didn't apply them at all. Yeah, so that's a common problem in many examiner reports that I would hope you don't repeat. Yeah. Okay. So if I just have a very quick look at some of the questions again on what I've just said, how do I know if it's 1 or 2 marks per point? Well, it's you that decide whether it's 1 or 2 marks, Shraddha. You, as I've just said, you give a proper interpretation of the requirements that's asked and explain and synthesize that information. And then if you take it a step further and you talk about the consequence, the so what, and the why, that 1 point can become 2 points. So it's not about whether you get what, there's up to 2 marks per point. How you develop your answer will determine whether you get 1 or 2. What's the best way to review the pre-seen material? The ACCA and I have recorded a full video on this. So you need, again, to get onto the ACCA Study Hub where your question will be answered. And I talk about how to deal with the pre-seen. Yep. So, yeah, you need to look at that. What if we copy and paste a punchline from an exhibit and later explain how it can help? I don't think that's a very good technique, Hassan, but I would interpret it your way. copying and pasting. Why are you doing it? I'm a CEO. I've given you that information and you're just copying and send it back to me. I know that information. I want your interpretation of it. And a copy and paste one. How does professional marks work when we develop an answer? I think what you need to do here, you need to read the professional skills marks very, very carefully. They provide the lens through which you answer the task. Professional skills marks, very important. They are the lens, and it often don't just stop where it says for skepticism. It often gives a bit more information, which can give a very good framework on how you plan your actual answer. I'm just, so another copy and paste. I think I answered about 8 marks, how we get that. Is it okay if I just prepare past papers or mocks? Well, it's difficult to answer that one, Lakshmi, but certainly use the resources on the ACCA Study Hub. Should I answer the questions like they are in the marking scheme? Well, unlike maybe tax and SBR, there are multiple ways in which you can get credit for an SBL answer. In the same way, if I asked you, who is correct, Southwest Airlines, Emirates, or Ryanair? Who's got the right strategy? They've all got a different strategy, but they're all very successful. Yeah. So, and as long as you explain and contextualize your answer, you could get credit for all 3. Obviously, in something like tax, 1 and 1 is always equal to 2. But on SBL, depending on how you develop, 1 and 1 could be 2, 3, or 4. And I know that upsets people that learn things, but the great thing about SBL is it's teaching you skills which are probably going to be the only skills you need in the future of finance. I know that from the CPD I do with CFOs and stuff. All the stuff that you've learned will all be done by bots. Yep, and bots are very cheap. I don't need to pay an expensive accountant to work out tax or financial calculations. However, a financially aware and savvy person that can contextualize finance issues within a scenario is extremely valuable, and I will pay handsomely for. So answering a few questions there, we will come back, but let's then move on. So we're taking exams in September. What practical advice would I be giving you for taking exams in September? Well, here we go. Firstly, I would say you need to create a timetable of how you live your life. And I'm not just talking about studying, I'm talking about work, rest, and play. Okay? Your brain needs to just like, imagine if I'm training for a marathon and I run every hour of the day, my muscles are just going to be knackered. Yeah. So I need to have a program where I get my brain restored through sleep. I reward myself with some play. I actually have to pay the bills, so I go to work, but I also do some study. So have a clear breakdown of that and stick to it. Yeah. Really important. Engage with the study hub. Make also your own summarized notes of what's on the study hub. The process of doing that kind of engraves it into your brain. Read the ACCA suggested articles. Exam questions come up on those regularly. Yeah, particularly, the IT ones, because it's ever evolving, but read all of them. If you haven't practiced mocks to time on the ACCA study hub, please do so. It is completely different to doing it in Word and Excel. The study hub has a few peculiarities, should we say. You just need to get used to them. It certainly doesn't do things like Word and Excel does. So just get used to it. Yeah. That's, it's a bit like if you're not practicing questions on the ACCA study hub, it's a bit like preparing for your driving test on a bicycle. Yeah. If you're going to do your driving test, you practice in a car. You wouldn't practice on a bicycle. So why would you practice mock questions on something that's not the ACCA study hub? Yeah. On the courses I run, I go through a bit of pain to load mine onto the study hub, but I go through that pain because I know it massively benefits students. So please do the same. And goes without saying, the previous examiner reports are also just as useful as the one we are reviewing today. So make sure you have a look at that. Really important. And then, as I say, there are lots of kind of warriors who know everything. They know all the tips for SBL on Facebook and other social media. They don't, okay? They don't. And the best place for you to acquire knowledge and advice is to stick with the ACCA Study Hub. If you're going on a course or you're listening to someone, make sure that those people are ACCA approved. You can check it out on the ACCA website. And the best approval you can get. The course I run is a platinum approved course. There are other platinum approved courses out there, but they will have the highest accreditation from the ACCA. So please, there's enough work to do rather than listening and looking at information from people who aren't approved by the ACCA. So really important that you do that. If you could, I'd be very happy. And yeah, don't know whether we've got any other things you want to ask me on that. Well, I'm going to ask you a quick question. And the question I'm going to ask you, and just be honest, I'm not, and there's probably an obvious answer that you want me, I want you to say here, but just tell me, I'm just curious, do you practice questions on the practice platform? Give you a moment to complete this poll. And please be honest. Okay. Let me have a look then. Okay, so half of you do. Okay, so it's a free resource that is going to seriously improve your chances in the exam. So what that means to me is half of you are not taking the full benefit. It's a free resource. I don't quite understand why you wouldn't have time in the diary to do that free resource. Yeah, I get very upset if any of my students don't do any mock exams on the CBE platform, because I know it's going to weaken their chances of passing the exam. So I'll follow up saying, look, why didn't you pass it? What was the problem? Well, this is key. You've got to do this. And, I'll give lots of marked comments and where people can improve. And, that's how you improve. So thank you for that. Okay, so what do we do, bearing in mind the mistakes that people make? What can we learn from all the errors people have made? What do you need to do? Well, the first thing you need to do, and someone asked me a question about that, is to thoroughly understand the pre-scene information. Remember that the pre-scene information isn't something that you need for pre-scene information isn't something that you need for question spotting, okay? But it gives you context, yeah? And you need to digest it. You need to, don't go through, there's going to be a question list, but if there's any terminology, if there's anything else that isn't making sense, you need to thoroughly read it and look at the ACCA video. Again, a free resource that you can access. I think it's on the YouTube channel on how to read the pre-scene. Yeah. We then are in the exam. We need to make sure we understand the task. Who are we? Yeah. Who are we talking to? What's the format? What's the verb? What are the professional skills marks being tested? How many marks? Yeah. So we don't just do a brain dump of technical information. We need to knit all of that together. Who I am, who I've asked to talk to, how many marks are available, what is the verb, what are the professional skills marks, and then maybe contextualize it in both the extra exhibits given in the exam and the pre-scene material. That's a great answer if you do that, and that's what I want you to do. Also, professional skills requirements, really, really, really important, as they often, as I say, they provide the lens through which you look at the whole task. And they often give, if you look back at recent exams and look at the professional skills marks, you will see that you have a kind of order in which you are addressing things. Yeah, and be familiar how you're supposed to behave. So if you're skeptical, you're not taking things at face value, you would challenge, just like I want you to challenge as a finance person in the real workplace. That's what you're there to do. Someone gives some information that, you know, the gearing's okay. And you say, well, hang on a minute, why did you say it's okay? The gearing's really high. We can't raise any more debt. The cost of our debt finance, because of that high gearing, is going to increase. That's the kind of interpretation I want you to be doing. Okay? So really important that you do that. And then please, please don't copy and paste. You just need to reinterpret what's being said, and you will get credit for that. That is important. Okay. What else? Really important that you get lots of sleep and stay hydrated. Your brain, I think, is something like 90% water. It won't perform very well if it is dehydrated. Your brain rejuvenates and, you know, like gets everything kind of ordered whilst you're sleeping. So make sure you get lots of sleep and stay hydrated. Think about the so what, the why, what is the consequence of the point we've just made. If you not just, some people like make a judgment. I think in the exam, there was a big judgment that, oh, they're old people, so they'll all be, they won't know anything about IT. Well, on what evidence do you base that? I would suggest that most of the examining team are quite old, and it's kind of a bit insulting to say that they're all technophobic, non-IT people. So your points must be backed with evidence. You can't just pull something out of the sky. Don't repeat things. The marker will spot that a mile off. Do it in the format required, especially if a communication professional skills is there and you do it in the wrong format. You know, you're going to lose a lot of the professional skills. And yeah, a lot of people get stressed doing exams. So that's something we can deal with. Learn a bit of maybe mindfulness, or you know, anything else that helps you. Some people go do exercise and stuff like that, but make sure you deal with all that. Okay, so I'm going to ask some questions in a moment, but before I do, or answer some questions, before I do, we've got one more poll going on here, and it's talking about the pre-September mock and debriefs. Do you know when they are released? Don't look them up. It's just to see. I mean, the ACCA just are interested because they provide lots of updates and information. Do you actually read it, or does it just fly over your head? Okay, let's have a look. Well, 13th and 19th, 9th and 19th, there's a bit, people definitely not, I think it's the 12th, I'm pretty certain, if I've got that right. The first mock comes out. I might get corrected on that, but I thought it was the 12th. I write my own mocks, do a lot of mocks, so I tend to say they can do these mocks in addition to my mocks. But yes, it is the 12th. Thank goodness I got that correct. So, hey, there's 35% of you, at least if you, yeah, anyway, it's a free resource. It just reflects that this isn't on your radar if you don't know the date. It should be, because it's going to make your performance in the exam so much better. And it's a free resource. So please, please, please take advantage of all this free stuff. It's far better going on the ACCA Study Hub rather than listening to someone on Facebook who, you know, someone that's worked with the ACCA education team for 20 years. I've never heard of these people. And I do lots of trainer, tutor events and all of that. And these people, I don't know where they come from. They're not approved. So stick with the ACCA Study Hub. Okay, let me then look at some questions that I haven't already answered. Let me have a look. Is it helpful to research about the industry of the company on the material? Not really, Grace. I think you stick with the information that you're not expected to. So be familiar with the terminology and everything that is given in the pre-scene. Can I show you a format for a memo, briefing paper, brief, email? You know what? The ACCA can do that if you look at past paper answers. So it's all there. It's all on the ACCA Study Hub. Do we all get the same pre-scene if we're based in the same country region? Well, you all get the same pre-scene, but there are variants of the exam to reflect the different times. Is it necessary to conclude answers? Well, it would be very nice to, but it would be a bit like me saying, is it important to fully balance every set of accounts? You might not have time to. So as long as you know you've got enough points to pass it, I mean, it's nice to conclude, but it might be a luxury you don't have if time is running tight. English is a second language. Does ACCA deduct marks? Definitely not. The ACCA say it is not an examination of English eloquence, but you are going into the workplace as an ACCA qualified accountant, and there would be an expectation that you can communicate in a business-like manner. So certainly not for grammar and stuff like that, but I would suggest try to regularly read some business journalism. The language used, the business English language used in that will rub off. How many minutes should we assign to read the exhibits? Again, there's an ACCA video I've done on this. Everyone's slightly different. But if you've got 3 hours, 15 minutes, I say about half an hour reading the tasks and exhibits and maybe making some notes. And then we've got about 160 minutes left. It's what is it? It's 100. You've got 195 minutes. If you spend about half an hour, you've got about 160 minutes left to attempt 80 technical marks. There's no time taken to get the professional skills marks. So a nice easy equation, 160 divided by 80, you have about 2 minutes per technical mark. That would be my advice. Yep. Is theoretical knowledge needed? And Leah, it is definitely not. The theoretical knowledge acts as a catalyst to help you maybe come up with ideas. But say you're in the workplace and someone's asking you to assess your competitors in your business, and then you say to your chief executive, according to Michael Porter's five forces are threat of new entrants, e.g. barriers to entry are, your boss would say, excuse me, what are you talking about? Yeah, the theoretical knowledge is not to be revealed, but very useful to generate ideas. Would I recommend doing past papers prior to September 2023? Yes, as long as you're familiar with the format. For September exams, do I expect to receive a pre-scene question? Well, a pre-scene set of information always comes out. So again, go to the ACCA Study Hub, make sure you understand all the information that it gives you on ACCA SBL. Can we practice exam kit or stick with the Study Hub? I think the Study Hub's fantastic. I'd maybe do both, Ishwar. Somehow I think we've answered that on the pre-scene. Again, go on the Study Hub. A lot of people are incorrectly stating the pre-scene is available. Well, Samantha, if they were familiar with the ACCA Study Hub, it's very clear when the pre-scene information comes out. It's 2 weeks before the exam. Your exam is at the beginning of June. Your ACCA will not come out until next Tuesday, I think. Solmani, how to synthesize information? Well, that's the skill that you are being tested. If you are just able to copy and paste, you're not really very valuable to an employer. So review articles and so on. When reviewing books like BPP Kit, there are answers that are deemed perfect and sometimes is a tad different. Is that a good site? Those answers that are deemed perfect, what you must remember is most of the answers in the official, or what was official, BPP and Kaplan examination kit, they tended to be the official ACCA answers. They weren't rewritten by BPP or Kaplan just took the ACCA official answers. Now, if you read the small print with regards to ACCA official answers, those answers had a tutorial purpose. They were not meant to be representative of the type of question or answer a student would give, but were to help in revision. So those answers are often quite long, not many subheadings, quite big points. The general information is what you should have been dealing with, but the format of those answers is probably more than you would be expected to do in an exam. How to evaluate mocks yourself? Well, there is a guide on marking that the ACCA provide. On task 2, was it wise to use the TARA framework? Yes, the TARA framework is an example of theoretical knowledge, which would provide a perfect structure for task 2 in the June-March exam. But you didn't necessarily say the TARA framework, but it gave you a great structure. What else have we got? Please provide examples of support. Okay, we've done that in the presentation. We've answered that question. We've answered that question. We've answered that question about how many marks for how many points for 8 marks. Any specific order recommend tackling questions? I would start at question 1 or task 1 and finish on task 3. Don't question spot. You have to do all of them. And sometimes task 3 follows on from information you've given in task 1. Is it always required to base your answers on theories? Good question, Urab. No. Sometimes theories, I would say, work for many of the answers, maybe 80%. But sometimes a question is asking you, what do you think? And if I asked you that in the street, you'd say this, that, and the other. But in an exam, you somehow then believe, oh, I'm in an exam, I can't say that. I've got to say it in a technical theory. You don't. So good question. I think theories are useful to act as catalysts, but the answer does not necessarily need to be based just on that. So good question. Thank you. Yeah, questions from more. We've answered that question. We've answered those questions. We have, yeah, the questions in the morning and afternoon session are different. If it asks for slides, it will be very clear what you need to do. I've answered that question. With regards to question practice, should we ignore the pre-scene and use other exit? No, you must understand the pre-scene. The pre-scene contextualizes the extra tasks given. So Daniel, please do not ignore the pre-scene. How would I recommend structuring the final 2 weeks? As I've said, you've got a clear timetable of how you live your life. You're looking after your brain. You are consolidating the study you have been doing over the last few months. I think I've answered these. At what point are you required to answer using a table? It's very rare for it to ask you to use a table, but often a table is a very nice format, communication format. This is the issue, this is the solution, the issue, the solution. So you decide, use your professional judgment whether you think it will be better that way. But again, you need to make sure you are familiar with how to create a table on the ACCA CBE platform. Osama, I was 3 marks off passing my previous sitting. Despite managing my time and finishing paper, what extra can I do to improve and as I feel demotivated? Well, if you were 3 marks off, you got 47, so you did lose 50% of the marks. First thing is only 50% of people pass. So please keep your spirits up. You will pass this exam, but take on board the comments I've been saying. Were you focusing on how many marks were available, and did the points you give, do you think they reflected at least half of the marks that were available? Yeah. Did you manage your time, or did you only manage, you said you managed it well, but I wonder, did you do everything? You finished the paper? Well, maybe you didn't write enough. Your points made were not reflective of how many marks were actually available. The session will be recorded, Zoe, yes. Just struggling with time management. You just really have to be very disciplined. And whilst answering a question, you have to kind of think, I can say more. Of course you can say more, but you only need to get 50. The best way to do well in this exam is try to get 50% or more in each of the tasks. The first 50% of a question are the easiest marks to acquire. So you need to put yourself in the position of getting the first 50 of task 1, the first 50 of task 2, and the first 50 of task 3. Yeah, that will be achievable and you will get more. But if you stay far too long on task 1, trying to get the 50 to 100 marks, the mark score per minute achieved is much lower than scoring the 0 to 50 on task 2 and the 0 to 50 on task 3. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, there's some things there. Right, let me have a look at some other questions. There is a folder with my name on it. I'm just having a look for that. So let me try and find this folder. Just bear with me a second. I'm just going down. Refresh. Well, just on the chat, I'm looking for a folder. I've got Q&A. Where would the folder, I've got a folder with my name in it with some extra questions. The left side where box is, left side, inbox. Is it in inbox? Okay. Press on that, inbox. Sean's questions, I can see it. Okay, thank you very much. Do we paraphrase instead of copy and paste? Most definitely, Sabrina. Great question. How do I plan? I've answered that question. Should we copy and paste? Definitely not. How much time should I allocate? I've said approximately half an hour, but again, go on the ACCA YouTube channel. I've created a video on this. So please, great resources on the ACCA YouTube. Is it mandatory to use the presentational slide? It's professional to, John. Yep. You would be expected as a professional to do that. So please become familiar by going on the ACCA CBE platform with how to use a slide. How much book reading will contribute to passing the exam? It's not a technical exam, unfortunately, Zishan. It is an applied exam. So I have people that come on courses with me having failed it a few times, and they said, I've learned all of the Kaplan and the BPP book. And I kind of think, well, that's where you've gone wrong. Have you done questions to time? Have you got mocks marked and so on? And they often haven't. They've just learned the book. You can pass tax doing that. You can't pass SBL. So thank you for those questions. We've answered that. I'm just having a look how to. Shveta, should they be exactly the same? No, I've said that. They shouldn't be the same. You should read the marking guide, because the marking guide will often give you an indication of what credit will be given for. Asan says, if a question specifically requires you to use a model, it will never ask you to use a model. There was a question in the pre-2022 September specimen paper 1 where it mentioned a model. I know that because I was involved in the rollout of the Train the Trainer. There has never really been a question asking you to use a specific model. Yep, so because that wouldn't be how it is in the workplace. You wouldn't be required to use a model. Yep, so if you're looking at questions where it's asking you to use a model, it is not a past SBL question. So you will not be asked to use a specific model, but I would say if you're looking at the external environment, Pestel is a great model. If you're doing competitive analysis, Five Forces is a great model. If you're looking at culture, the cultural web is a great model. If we're evaluating risk, Tara is a great model. All of the, if we're looking at marketing, the 6Ms is a great model. So, but you don't reveal them. You don't reveal them. You use them as catalysts. Okay. So some great questions there. I think we've pretty much answered them all. Thank you very much. That's hundreds of questions you've fired in. So thank you for being so interactive. Hopefully that has reassured you. Please don't go crazy. You would not run a marathon the night before a marathon because you'd be too tired to run the actual marathon. So look after yourself with sleep. Look after yourself by keeping hydrated. Make sure that you have a good holistic understanding of all the syllabus. You don't need to go into the minutiae, the tiny detail. Yep. Make sure you have a look at the ACCA YouTube channel where there are lots of great resources for SBL. Go onto the study hub and you'll be absolutely fine. Believe in yourself. And if you're stuck, think, what would you do in the workplace? What would I do in the workplace? Well, I do this. Well, say it in your exam answer and you'll be absolutely fine. Okay. So that's great. I think maybe Hazel's going to just say a couple of words and thanks for all your questions. And I wish you all the very, very best in your studies. And if you do get stressed, make sure you understand that and you've got something in your bag, mindfulness, whatever works for you to deal with it. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Sean. So as Sean said, we do need to bring things to a close, and I hope that you found today's session really useful. I'd just like to remind you about a couple of the important resources that are updated in the resources section of the webinar before you leave. So the slides are there in PDF that Sean had today. There's also the pre-September 2024 mock and debrief support that he talked about, latest examiner report, technical articles and topic explainers, and there's the links to the ACCA Study Hub and the ACCA Student Study Resource YouTube channel. For everyone that has registered for the webinar, you will get an email tomorrow with details of how you can listen to it again. Thank you for joining today, and finally thank you to Sean for extending your support, and thank you to the team behind the scenes that have helped deliver the session successfully. So best of luck with your exams. Thank you.
Thank you.